And welcome to our second video on Introduction to R and R Studio for the Bio 170 class here at Lawrence University. And I'm your instructor, Israel Del Toro. And today we're going to be walking through a couple of things dealing with R syntax and data structure. And so to understand this, we have to start off with learning some very basic and common vocabulary. Learning R is really like learning a whole new language. And with that new language comes new vocabulary. And so here's some of the vocabulary that we're going to be using throughout the term that you really need to know what it is before we get to some actual coding. So let's start off by defining what an object is. R is all about creating objects. Objects can contain data. They could be data sets, they could be functions, they could give us instructions on how to apply functions. And so R is really based off of the idea that we can create as many objects as we need to and manipulate them. The simple way to create an object is using a couple of assignment notations. So let's say we wanted to create an object called X. To create the object called X, we might use something like the less than minus sign and assign X a value, like 3. We can also create an object by using Y. Let's say we want to make the object Y and using the equal sign. Let's say we want Y equal to 4. And now all we can do is take X and sum Y. And that should give us 7. Now, we'll go through an example on how to do this in a minute with some actual code, but what you really need to know here is that R revolves around making these different objects with these different symbols, the less than minus sign or the equal sign. The next big vocabulary word we want to learn is going to be what a function is. Now, a function can be a very, very simple rule. It could be mathematical, logical, or numeric. And so in this case, our very simple function in our x plus y scenario would be the plus sign. The plus sign here tells us what we want to do with x and y, or tells R what to do with your objects. So it's really just a set of rules. Now, the last thing we want to know about structuring the language in an R command is going to be the argument. And these are all the details that go into building a line of code. And we'll go through some of the material and some arguments in just a little bit. So let's go ahead and see if we can put this into practice using some very simple code. I'm just going to switch screens here. Here's our RStudio screen. And remember, when we open RStudio, we have 4 different screens. We have our writing console up here. Our writing panel, or our scripting panel up here. We have our console down in the bottom left-hand corner. We have our environment in the top right-hand corner. And then we have our outputs, our plots and helps windows right here in the bottom right-hand corner. So let's make some objects in R. Let's start off with our simple example of x plus y. Let's say we want to create an object called x. We do that using the assignment of less than minus sign, or the little arrow. That's what it ends up looking like. Let's say we want to say x is equal to 3. So once we type in our code, we can run our code by just clicking run. Or if you are on a Mac, you can do Command Enter. And now when we want to bring up the value of x, we just type in x, and yes, indeed, now x shows us that it is equal to 3. Let's assign an object called y now, but this time, instead of using the less than minus sign, we're going to go ahead and use the equal sign. So y is equals to 4. We'll run that bit. And when we ask R what y is, it should tell us it is 4. Perfect. Now we can apply our very first function. Let's say we want x plus y. And now we have a very simple function here. X plus y is equal to 7. This is all looking good, but what if we wanted to save that 7 as its own object? Let's say we wanted to make that object z. So z is going to equal x plus y. And now we have a whole new object called z, and z is equal to 7. So here we've created 3 different objects, and if you'll notice, if you look at our global environment, our objects are now listed in this top right-hand corner. X is equal to 3, y is equal to 4, and z is equal to 7, or x plus y. So here's a very simple way in which we've used functions now to create objects in R. Sometimes we'll also need to designate other arguments. For example, if we wanted to make a new object, call it cats is equal to sum. Now that's our function, the sum function here of x comma, well, why don't we do x comma y comma z. Let's see what happens here. Now we've created a whole new object called cats, which is equal to x plus y plus z, with the function sum and the different arguments being the different objects that we want to plug into our new object. And it's as simple as that. This gets us started basically with our coding in R. We're essentially learning a new language here, so it might be frustrating at first, but the more we practice and the more objects we create with functions and arguments, the easier and more natural this is going to start to feel. One last thing before I leave you guys. Let's say we wanted to list our different objects and we couldn't see them for some reason in our global environment. All we would want to do is type in the function ls and then open close parens, and that's going to give us the list of objects that are right now in our global environment, cats, x, y, z. If we wanted to remove one of these objects, let's say we wanted to get rid of cats, we would simply type rm, the name of the object we want to remove, and now cats is gone. And you can see it's gone because it's no longer in your global environment, or if we do run ls again, cats is now gone. Okay, so there you have it. Simple data object creations, simple introduction to functions in R, and a simple introductions to the different arguments that you might encounter. All right, join us next time for our next video, which is going to be dealing with working directories, loading data, and loading libraries.